The search is on for 12 jurors who will decide the fate of Martha Stewart. The jury selection process for the domestic diva's trial begins tomorrow. How important is the process? Christopher Bebel, partner at Shepard, Smith & Bebel, and Randall Elias, an adjunct law professor at American University, with us. And Chris, I start with you. You believe this is critical.
That's absolutely right. This is one of the most critical phases of the case. It can even become outcome determinative. We have to remember that this is a close case. By no means is it a slam dunk. A jury pool that is slanted one way or the other can make all the difference in the world.
Randall, you're not so sure.
No, it's certainly a very important part of the process. On the other hand, I think a lot of people feel, and I sort of fall in this camp, that a lot of the so-called science and folklore surrounding jury selection is without a lot of basis, and that once you have sort of weeded out those with an obvious bias or interest in the case, then really put the first 12 people in the box that come in and you're probably going to do just about as well.
Chris, based on how fantastically public this process has been so far, are the odds more in her favor in terms of the type of jury she's going to get, or more against her?
There's going to be a lot of people sitting in that jury box that feel they are acquainted with her before the trial even starts. They're not going to have to hear her testify in order to get a sense of who she is and what she's accomplished. And that's going to work in her favor to a large extent, especially with the women who give her so much credit before the trial starts for succeeding in a world that is tilted in favor of men in corporate America.
Randall, do you believe that the jury is more likely to work in her favor?
I think it's a difficult, I think her celebrity status does make it a more difficult case for the government because she is such a well-known figure, and an important part of what the government will try to do during the jury selection process is to try to weed out those individuals who, because of their familiarity with the defendant and her products and her company, might be more inclined to see things her way.
Who makes the best jurist?
The best juror?
Yeah, or juror, excuse me. Yeah.
Well, that would depend on which side you're asking, of course. The government in a case like this, you're basically your ideal juror is your sort of solid citizen. You want someone who's employed, a good, solid member of the community, perhaps someone who has some business experience. Someone with some stock experience would be familiar with these types of transactions and things that are at the heart of the case. The defense, as ideal juror, would likely be somewhat different. They might be looking for someone whose background would suggest a tendency to be somewhat suspicious of the government, someone who might be more sympathetic towards a defense claim that really this case is unfair, that Martha Stewart has been targeted because she's a powerful and successful woman, and that the case is really unjustified. The defense will want to try to find people who might be more inclined to accept that type of argument.
Chris, are you comfortable with the number of advisors involved? I know there's been reports that Martha Stewart has hired a psychiatrist or a psychologist to evaluate the jurors. To what extent is it appropriate that there is significant analysis of the jury, and when do we cross the line?
Well, in a case like this, where it's going to be a close call as to whether there's an acquittal or a conviction, the parties will be inclined to pour as much money into this as it takes if it gets them even an inch ahead. Obviously, the thought process here is that these people, these advisors, can contribute to a successful outcome. Even if they can contribute just a little bit, it's well worth the money that's spent. It goes too far, however, when there's an invasion of privacy as to the jurors, when there's detailed background investigations that are done that intrude into their personal life in order to get a closer view of their inner thought process. It goes too far then.
Chris, Randall, literally in a word, you first, Chris, does she get acquitted or not?
I think she gets convicted. Maybe not in all counts, but on at least one count.
Randall?
I think she gets convicted on the obstruction type counts, not on the securities fraud count.
All right. Chris Bebel, Randall Elias, and with us on Martha Stewart. Again, jury selection beginning first thing tomorrow morning in New York.